shame, shame, shame on those Republicans that don't have the nerve, the balls to go after him.
Jimmy Kimmel leaned into the moment with his trademark mix of mockery and biting satire, but this time the target was more vulnerable than ever. With Donald Trump having just secured a second term after defeating Kamala Harris, the nation was still reeling from the shock of his return to power. His first few months back in the Oval Office had been nothing short of chaotic, marred by scandals, missteps, and the constant swirl of accusations. Kimmel, who had built a reputation for skewering Trump with late-night jabs, now had an avalanche of new material, and he did not hold back. His commentary cut deeper than it had during Trump's first presidency because the context was darker, the circumstances heavier, and the public fatigue with political theatrics at an all-time high. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. Robert De Niro, long one of Trump's most outspoken critics, matched that energy with the gravitas of a man who had seen decades of American politics unfold and could sense when the country was walking into dangerous territory. His denunciation carried a tone not of humor but of simmering outrage, sharpened by years of watching what he considered the degradation of leadership. Together, Kimmel and De Niro formed a kind of cultural 1-2 punch, one using ridicule to strip Trump of his bravado, the other hammering down with moral authority. Their synchronized attack became the headline of the moment, signaling that Trump's second act in the White House was going to face not only political opposition, but also relentless cultural resistance. The core of their focus rested on the multiple allegations of secret affairs Trump was accused of having, even as Melania Trump was visibly distant from the public stage. These allegations didn't appear out of nowhere. They had floated around the media ecosystem for years, but in the early days of his second term, they gained new traction. What stunned many was not simply the idea of marital infidelity, it was the brazenness of it happening during a time when Trump was supposed to be proving that he could govern responsibly after an embattled first presidency. Instead, the chatter about affairs reinforced the perception of a leader addicted to scandal, incapable of separating personal desires from public duties. Kimmel tapped into the absurdity of it all. He highlighted the contradictions, the spectacle of a president accused of stepping outside his marriage while simultaneously claiming to be the champion of conservative family values. His words didn't just ridicule Trump's behavior, they illuminated the hypocrisy in a way that audiences could laugh at, but also reflect on. The laughter in the studio and at home was cathartic, the kind of collective release that came from being confronted with the ridiculousness of reality. Yet beneath the humor was a clear implication. This was not just gossip. This was emblematic of a president who could not be trusted to lead with integrity. De Niro, on the other hand, brought no laughter. His voice was weighty, deliberate, and filled with disdain for what he saw as the corrosion of American dignity. For him, the allegations of affairs were not tabloid fodder, but proof of a deeper rot, evidence that Trump's presidency was built on deception and self-interest. His message was less about jokes and more about calling Americans to recognize the danger of normalizing such behavior in the highest office. De Niro's tone echoed that of an elder statesman, someone who was not running for office but who felt a moral responsibility to use his platform to condemn what he viewed as national betrayal. The timing of these public commentaries was especially impactful. Trump's first few months in his second term were supposed to be his redemption arc. After narrowly defeating Kamala Harris in a bitterly fought election, he had promised stability, strength, and prosperity. Instead, his administration lurched from one controversy to another. Cabinet appointments were plagued by resignations. Foreign leaders voiced open skepticism, and the domestic landscape was roiled by protests and economic anxiety. Into that storm came whispers of his extramarital affairs, whispers that seemed to grow louder with each day. Kimmel and De Niro's voices, amplified by their celebrity status, pushed those whispers into a roar that could not be ignored. For the American public, the implications of their words ran deeper than the momentary spectacle of celebrity commentary. Kimmel represented the voice of ordinary citizens who used humor to cope with the absurdity of political life. He was, in many ways, holding up a mirror to a country that had learned to laugh through the pain, because the alternative, taking it all too seriously, was unbearable. De Niro represented something sterner, a reminder that laughter alone could not solve the underlying crisis. His condemnation was a call to remember that leadership mattered, that character mattered, and that the presidency was not a role to be reduced to reality television antics. The accusations of affairs carried symbolic weight because they touched on the question of trust. If the president could not honor vows to his spouse, could he be expected to honor commitments to his citizens? The question lingered in the air as commentators across the spectrum dissected the implications. Kimmel and De Niro's interventions magnified that unease, using their platforms not only to entertain or vent frustration, but to underscore the broader erosion of faith in institutions. The American people were watching a president embroiled in personal scandal, even as critical decisions about the economy, foreign relations, and national security loomed. The cultural clash that unfolded was emblematic of the Trump era itself. Entertainment and politics intertwined, personalities overshadowing policy, and public perception shaped as much by late-night monologues and celebrity interviews as by press briefings and legislative debates. Kimmel's humor and De Niro's fury became part of the national conversation, replayed in news segments, dissected in op-eds, and shared across social media platforms. They weren't politicians, but in an age where influence extended beyond Washington, they wielded immense power in shaping how Trump's actions were understood by millions. This dynamic also reflected the peculiar role of celebrity in American democracy. Trump himself had risen from reality television, blurring the line between showmanship and governance. In that sense, it was almost poetic that two entertainers, one a comedian, the other a legendary actor, emerged as some of his most formidable critics. Their attacks underscored the idea that culture could check political power in ways that formal mechanisms sometimes failed to do. Kimmel and De Niro didn't need votes or legislation. They needed only their voices and their audiences. And those were powerful tools in a media-saturated environment. The backdrop of Kamala Harris's defeat added another layer of tension. Her loss had disappointed millions who had hoped her presidency would represent a new chapter of inclusivity and progress. Instead, the country found itself reliving a nightmare it thought it had escaped. For those Americans, Kimmel's jokes were not merely funny, they were therapeutic. De Niro's outrage was not merely anger, it was validation of their own disillusionment. Together, their responses gave voice to a collective sense of betrayal that went beyond partisan politics and spoke to the very soul of the nation. The allegations against Trump also reignited debates about gender, power, and respect in public life. The suggestion that he engaged in secret affairs while his wife remained in the background highlighted dynamics of privilege and impunity that many Americans found troubling. Was this the example that should be set from the White House? Could a leader embroiled in personal scandals truly command the moral authority required of the presidency? Kimmel framed those questions in punchlines, but De Niro pressed them as serious indictments. Their combined critiques forced Americans to confront not just the details of the allegations, but the larger question of what standards the country was willing to accept. As the weeks passed, the echoes of Kimmel and De Niro's words lingered. Their interventions became part of the early narrative of Trump's second term, a narrative defined by chaos, controversy, and discontent. They had, in their own ways, destroyed the carefully crafted image Trump tried to project of control and dominance. Humor stripped away the facade, and moral outrage punctured the illusion of inevitability. What remained was a portrait of a presidency teetering under the weight of its own contradictions, laid bare for the world to see. And yet, the significance of that moment was not just in the damage done to Trump, but in what it revealed about American society. It showed that the battle over truth and integrity was not confined to the halls of Congress or the chambers of the courts. It played out on television screens, on stages, in interviews, and in the voices of those who felt compelled to speak out. Kimmel and De Niro embodied two approaches, laughter and fury, that together captured the mood of a nation struggling to reconcile itself with the reality of a second Trump presidency. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Kimmel and De Niro attacking Trump publicly? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.